Well, thank you all for joining us today. The purpose of this is to give local leagues more of an idea of what the lobby team does. And frankly, we're also going to ask for your help. So we will do that last, but we're going to do a series of discussions and then we're going to open it up for your questions and try to answer all of them. I don't know if we can, but we're going to try. So my name is Cynthia Stewart. I'm the current chair of the lobby team. And each of these people are, I think we have about a third of our lobby team members here. So would you each introduce yourselves and say what your issue chair is?
I'm Jody Disney. I'm a member here in Thurston, and I'm the healthcare issue chair.
I'm Karen Tweed. I'm also here in Thurston, and I'm the early care and education issue chair.
Could you say your name again?
Yes, Karen Tweed. TVEDT, because it's not phonetic.
Hey, maybe we could write your names on the white thing back there.
White thing? Oh, well, got a pen?
There you go.
Recruiting.
That's not a good spelling. Okay.
Okay.
Let's just introduce, keep going.
Yeah, so Janet?
Janet Hedgepath, I'm from Clark and the Children's Services Chair.
Mary Lynn Courtney, I'm from Whatcom County. I live in Wellington County, and my issue is behavioral health.
And I'm Marty Gibbons. I am the Climate Crisis and Energy Issue Chair.
Thank you. What I'd like to do now is have you all tell us what local leagues you're in, and we'll have you talk to us when we get to the end of our presentation. But I'd like to know what areas you're from, and that will help us actually understand a little bit more about what your needs are. So let's start with you.
Me?
Yeah, what local league are you from?
Bill Whipple, Clark County League of Women Voters.
Thank you. Next.
Lisa Adders, Snohomish County.
Thank you.
Karen Barrow, Thurston County. Vicki Roberts Gassler, Snohomish County.
Laura, Snohomish County.
Nathaniel Jones, Thurston County.
Rosamond Duffy, Seattle King.
Karen Rice, Mason County.
Kit Yeoman, Whatcom County.
Melanie Hanshaw, Clark County.
Deb Olson, Holman. Julie Sarkisian, Seattle King County.
Phyllis Farrell, Thurston.
Maureen Serbinsky, Kitsap.
Thank
Dan
you.
Hurst, Washington County.
Michael?
Michael Martin, San Juan County C3 Treasurer.
Teresa Harvey, Pierce County.
McCaffrey, I'm the issue chair for redistricting, and I live in Tacoma.
Chuck Jensen, also Pierce County.
And then Bonnie?
Bonnie from Clallam. Stephanie Sherman from Clallam County.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's a pretty good distribution. We really appreciate your interest. So what we're going to do is start by asking a couple of our members what attracted them to join the lobby team. Why are they here? So Jody?
I have been a healthcare practitioner all of my life in different areas, and throughout my career, different careers in nursing and midwifery, I was an advocate at the state and national level. And advocacy has always been one of my pleasures and interests. So that's really, I think that began in my career in nursing, seeing that organizations needed help in terms of accomplishing their goals. And that's what interests me.
Thank you. Janet?
Democracy for me really means about having that voice, and certainly voting is one way to do that, but actually getting the chance to talk to legislators, to hear what's going on, to see how bills are formed was just so has always been exciting to me. And to be involved in that with an organization who had nice issues and positions was a wonderful opportunity. Children's issues in particular was interesting to me because I've worked with children in my career, and they don't have a voice. They don't get to vote. And it becomes, I think, especially important to make sure that their issues are front and center.
Thank you. Mary Lynn?
Mary Lynn Courtney, I came here in kind of a roundabout way. In fact, I blame Jody for it. Sometime after I joined the league, I remember seeing you, Marty, giving a presentation about the lobby team. I can't tell you when or where, it's very big, but as I watched it, I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. That sounds, maybe I'd like to do that. Maybe I'll do that someday. And like I do everything, someday never kind of happens with most things. And I'm not like everybody else. I don't know, I don't follow through with all the things I want to do. And then one evening, Jody had decided to be the healthcare issues chair, and she called me and asked me, and the reason I joined is because somebody asked me, and I remember hearing several people just a few minutes ago saying the reason they joined the league, somebody asked me. So it's all her fault. I'm gonna blame her.
What's your issue again?
Behavioral health, and that particular area interests me because I'm a retired psychologist.
And that I just wanted to add too that is I did help Kim Abbey, who was the healthcare issue chair for several years, researching behavioral health bills for her because she couldn't get to them because healthcare is a huge issue. And so, and then Cynthia asked me, so I think it is all about the ask.
Okay, so some of you probably wonder what an issue chair does. And we use the term in the league issue chair to mean lobbyist. We are volunteer lobbyists, but we're called issue chairs because the league doesn't really lobby. It provides information. So Karen, could you talk a little bit about what the role of the issue chair is? How do we do our work?
So I come to being issue chair for early care and education after having spent a career in early childhood education, childcare. And I think that's how a lot of us come to the lobby team role, is that it's an issue we know a lot about and we want to continue being advocates on those issues. But so as the issue chair for early care and education, I follow the bills. I mean, I'm just the core of it. Following the early care and education bill during the session, analyzing them, seeing if there are bills that the league can support, developing the descriptions in the legislative newsletter that folks get on Sunday. And then as part of that, I participate in weekly meetings of the league lobby team where we get together and talk about hot issues and overlapping issues. And as you might, I mean, this past year, there was a bill that had to do with forestry and childcare and early learning. Clearly, we needed to coordinate to make sure that we were on the same page. I also participate in meetings of the Children's Alliance and the Early Learning Action Alliance and follow Starting Early's analysis to make sure that I'm on the same page, that I'm reading things correctly, that, you know, if we're not supporting or taking the same position, we're clear about why that's happening. I want to make a pitch for, I mean, I don't know who across the league is interested in early care and education issues. And I would love it if people would come talk to me, because I would love to have people I was working with in local leagues. And that's off the topic, but you know.
And we're going to do that again later. We're going to make that pitch again. So Marty, what would you add to that?
Well, Karen said a lot. I think the first rule is don't be afraid, because nobody knows everything and you can learn things as you go. But having an interest in a topic or an issue is good, but it's not absolutely necessary. Don't be afraid. And we write testimony for the committee hearings primarily, and we can testify in the hearings. Now, that isn't necessarily required if you're afraid of public speaking, but you can learn to like public speaking and get practice at that so you're more comfortable. And then there's the communication with the membership that we talked about a little bit. The formal one is the newsletter, the legislative action newsletter, but then there's also you can communicate by writing articles in the Voter and in League and in any number of other ways to do it. And but don't overwhelm yourself with the task. Do what you can, and that's sort of the order of importance. I think there are some things that are required to do, but you can get help. You can get mentored in this role, and you're not alone.
So neither of you mentioned talking to legislators. Can one of you talk about that aspect?
Before session, there is often an opportunity to call legislators who are, you look at who is serving on the committees of interest to your issue, and especially the chair and the vice chair, and call them up and arrange a telephone conversation with them and to ask them what are your priorities for the session? What can we be looking for as bills coming up? And it is a forecast, like a weather forecast. Sometimes the bills don't arrive. Sometimes they arrive late that they're trying to they anticipate promoting. Sometimes there are new topics that are a surprise to everybody, but it gives you an idea of what may happen in the legislature in your area. And that first thing that happens is bills coming into committee. And we follow, each of us will follow a few committees to understand what's coming through and what we have to testify for initially, and prepare to communicate with our members as well on what's happening.
One thing that is new since COVID that makes it easier to participate in giving testimony is that all of the hearings are hybrid. So for folks who are around the state, it's much easier to weigh in and testify on bills, watch legislative hearings. They're all televised on TVW. And so I find it much easier to follow what's going on and also to testify.
And I guess one more quick thing on talking to the legislators, they're usually fairly enthusiastic to talk to the league. The League of Women Voters carries some weight here, and so we use it, of course. But they are usually very enthusiastic to talk, at least for 15 minutes on the phone, and sometimes half an hour or something, a surprise. But anyway, so it shouldn't be intimidating to do that.
Just to be more specific, the 15 minutes is during session. You never get more than 15 minutes. You might get a half an hour if you're in between in the interim. So they have a little bit more time. So how about coalitions? What do issues chairs do with coalitions?
Coalitions are extremely important because we don't know everything. We don't, in the case of climate and energy policy, we are members of coalitions that have experts there, both in law and in technology, that I rely on to get to the truth of what's going on in a bill. And so that's one thing, getting the information they have, and then crafting a voice for the league on that topic, understanding what their voice is going to be. In other words, they're going to talk maybe more about the technical. We talk more about how that affects some of our other issues. I try to tie it into other issues, especially in climate crisis, health. and housing and that sort of thing. And we maybe have a minute or 3 minutes at the most to give the testimony. We'll get right a lot too. Anyway, so the coalitions provide some of that additional information. And then the coalitions will also write letters from a coalition on a topic and ask us to sign on. And then there's a process for approving that. But that's another opportunity for us to show the league. I call it showing the flag. Have the league be in concert with the other responsible organizations that are in that coalition. So we show our alignment with these important policy positions for the community, for the state.
The other thing I found, I'll get you in just a second. The other thing I found helpful with a coalition is they often will coordinate strategy. So if we're all supporting a given bill, then who says what, who gets to be on a panel to testify, who's sending letters, who's generating other kinds of public engagement and all of that kind of thing. So the strategy part is really important as well. So yes, you had a question?
Could you give an example of a coalition? I'm really brand new. What is it?
Two of them that I'm involved with, the Environmental Priorities Coalition, and that has about 28 members, all the way from Earth Ministry to Sierra Club and Nature Conservancy. So once again, they are aligning primarily priorities. What are the priorities for this session? And they will identify 3, 4, or 5, sometimes 5, usually it's 4 areas of importance. And we may not know the bills yet, because this happens in the fall before the session. We may not know the bills, but here's what we're going to try to focus on. And other areas that we might want to speak out on, these people are coalition professional staff too, so they want to focus on success on a few areas and have to give up some other areas that may not be. So another coalition is Northwest Energy Coalition, and that's a bigger coalition. It goes from Montana to Oregon, Idaho, Washington. And so they really dive into deeply into policy. So they have information that I need to understand what's really behind or what's going to happen in this bill if we pass and what amendments they may be going after. So those are the 2 coalitions that I interact with mostly.
I can give an example of one that Mary Lynn and I belong to, which is Healthcare is a Human Right. And it is a very large coalition, similar to what Marty's talking about, that brings together all people who are interested in healthcare and promoting, there's a true line through it, promoting universal healthcare. So we all work together very similarly. We go through bills, we have priorities, and then we all agree to those bills, you know, as we go through the process. So it's really, really useful and helpful.
Anne, you had your hand up a minute ago. Did you have something you'd like to add?
First of all, apologies for being late. I had another hand I had to get rid of. And I'm Anne Murphy, and Marty and I work together in the environmental arena. I've been following the waste diversion issues, but Marty kind of touched on so many of these other people in the groups in the coalition have paid staff that are working on getting this information out and that kind of thing. And I think one of the that we're dealing with right now in terms of a great coalition thing. I mean, we had the coalition dealing with passing the Climate Commitment Act in the last few years, and now that coalition is mobilizing to on the no on 2117. So it's an arc of action, passing something in the legislature and then making sure we get to keep it. So
that's also true of the Washington Cares.
Right.
That's being really lifted up by groups that we work with.
And those coalitions, those members have other members, and so you get that.
Yeah, I think there's what, Marilyn, do you remember? There's probably 24 coalitions and healthcare. Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to go back a step. I'll get you next, Nathaniel. I just want to go back a step and talk about one more aspect of the issue chair role. We are not like most of the other organizations. We do not have professional paid staff. What we do have is a contract lobbyist, but her role isn't necessarily to speak for us the way she does for many other clients. Well, her role is to help us with strategy. She gives us a lot of advice. She tells us the inside story of stuff that's going on that we might not know otherwise and that kind of thing. So we have a professional paid lobbyist, but she doesn't speak for us. She helps us do our job well.
What's her job title again?
Pardon me?
Her job title again?
Contract lobbyist. Nathaniel?
Well, my question has to do with, the league adopting positions and speaking in one voice and how that affects your work, and particularly how you navigate with these coalitions when you may have different viewpoints.
Who would like to talk about that? Well,
Okay, we have the documentation on our positions and, you know, they're spelled out. Now, they're not extremely specific, but when I look at a bill, I see, well, what positions does this bill align with? I made a list of the positions that affect mostly climate and energy. And so I go through there and see, does it align or does it not? Does it align? If I get enough alignment, okay, we will take a position on that. And
Separate that a little bit,
Okay.
because these are the positions. You know, the state positions, we can also use national positions. And then we create a statement, that says we support that. I mean, we use the word position
I think one of
differently.
part of Nathaniel's question was when we don't have an agreement
Oh.
with a coalition.
We got that
well.
with EPC this.
Yes, and so getting back to the Environmental Priorities Coalition, they set some priorities, so they ask the members, please, and it's usually support in the recent climate of the legislature. If you oppose that, please do not take an opposing position, leave it alone, that's fine.
Mhm.
So that's the rule of being part of the coalition. And there's plenty of things we can support that we haven't run into anything so far that would be contentious, I think. And there's a lot of bills in the legislature, so we cannot deal with everything. You know, so it has not been a problem so far in my area that we've had a major conflict. And, you know, like we were talking, Bill, you know, we don't have positions on a lot of things. And that isn't exactly time. We gotta be very careful.
I don't know how to stop this.
Somebody's phone is.
Somebody's calling in. Diane, could you hold on for a minute, please? I don't know if you can hear me. You had a question next.
Well,
I don't know what to
for
do.
example,
Yeah.
when you decide, when you're making the decision about signing in and not signing in on a letter. So that comes back to the group of all of the, is that right? When you guys meet before
Well,
the session?
When we sign on to a coalition letter, it's only with board approval. So what we do is we submit the letter and who else is on it to the state board and ask for them to approve it. And because the board only meets once a month, often the executive committee can do that. But we don't actually get to make that choice all by ourselves. Now we have somebody online, but I don't know how to call on her.
Let me look and see if we can figure it out.
And you give me an example of something that you didn't oppose, but we just.
One with the environmental
Right.
coalition this last year.
No, that
They
would be
were
outside.
supporting a bill that actually was
Oh,
not an
unmute,
environmental bill
unmute.
per se. They were supporting one that we then had to consult with our elections issue chair on, because it was a voting one. And it was one she had chosen not to take a position on. And it's real important that we designate that. Don't just say no position, because people will say, here, you're vote no, but the league has not taken a position. And so it's just a little nuance in wording there to making sure it's clear that what we are doing.
Yeah. So we have somebody online who we're trying to get to speak. Diane, if you're still muted, can you unmute and go ahead and talk? Diane, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you, but I wasn't calling in. If you're talking to me, I'm in Benton County.
Okay.
I was not calling in.
Oh,
Oh, we
okay.
thought you wanted to talk, so
Yeah.
you can mute
No,
yourself.
no, I'm listening, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, you had another question?
That's right, it slipped.
I'm sorry. Apologize for all that.
One thing, since the group seems to be interested, I was trying to pass a bill one session, and I was working in a coalition called Redistrict Justice Washington, and they actually wanted to take the amendment process farther, trying to amend the bill. We were trying to get it through. And as a league, we're a more moderate organization than some of the others who were in coalition. And so we had to say, okay, we're not taking that amendment process. We're not supporting that amendment process that you want to do. We as a league are saying that's going a little too far. So we're going to step away. So it's a really interesting strategy to know what organization you're representing and to know when your coalition partners may be stepping outside the bounds of what the league can support. And so you're negotiating that with your partners, who's doing what.
I just want to add to that and then I'll call on you. So what I typically do is explain what our position is and why we can't do it, or explain what our position is and why we can do it. So a lot of that translation goes into the communication with our coalition members. So Rosalind?
Well, kind of answered it a little bit, so I was just trying to get clear. We joined a coalition. We are aligned here with them, but they do something that we don't agree with. Part of our being in that coalition means we don't come out against it, but we say the league has no position, or we say that the league has not taken a position, or what you just said was that we don't have a position that aligns with that.
Right, and we say that in the coalition, not to the legislature. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You answered.
Yes. Oh, okay. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to put a plug in for your legislative newsletter. That folks here who have not signed up. It is excellent, and it gives me action points, just the way I need them. And
So that's a good segue for you.
that's your state legislature. So I really encourage everybody, at the minimum, to make sure they're on that.
Perfect segue to our next point. Say what?
You have to sign up now.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
So Jody is going to talk a little bit about how we communicate with each other and with our members and with the public.
And everyone can chime in too, because this is actually a big topic, but I think it's very multifaceted how we communicate with each other. First of all, I want to know how many of you can raise your hand, are signed up for the league newsletter. Oh, well.
Awesome.
Great, that's wonderful. And so if the rest of you want to do that, you just go onto the website and request it. I would say that
carries over from year to year, doesn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
should.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, what I especially like is the action alerts at the beginning of the newsletter. Those, for those of you that don't know, the lobby team every week prioritizes usually three or four?
Up to five.
Up to five, but usually 3 or 4 bills. And if I'm in a jam for time or whatever, I just zero in on those action alerts, because the newsletter, I mean, we have, I don't know how many different issue chairs and divisions. It'll take a long time to read through those and act on all of them. And so, you know, I know those are the priorities of the league that week, and I can address them that way.
So in addition to that, we have the 5 at the top, or 3 to 5. And then at the bottom, there's a list of the issues. So climate change, forests, early care and education, children's, behavioral health. And if we have a bill that we don't think rises to the top three, but we really would like to see people who care about that issue particularly weigh in, there's a little yellow triangle. So follow the issues you're particularly concerned about, watching for those little yellow triangles.
I also want to add that we never expect any person to read the entire legislative newsletter. You would spend a week doing it. What we do ask you to do is pick your favorite issues and read that carefully and take action. So Jody, back to you.
Okay. So our communication with each other is very multifaceted. I think it begins with our weekly meeting, and those occur on Thursday, and it's an hour and a half. We also meet pre-session, so meetings occur. There's a retreat in the summer, which is almost a full day, and then meetings occur pre-session to start planning and looking at what's coming up, and to meet with our lobbyists too. I think that's really important. The other thing we have that is super helpful, and I think in some ways it's almost more helpful, is our group team meetings. So we work in teams. The social and economic team is healthcare. It's child and children's issues, and it is
early care
and education, and it's criminal justice. And they play a really big part in our team as well. They're not here, but they do. And so I particularly find that really helpful to have a team and to work together. Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm understanding this, because I'm hearing about your group as a group, you're kind of aligning yourself, and there's communication there. Is this something different?
It's sort of like a subgroup of the big lobby team. We have smaller groups where we congregate kind of around an issue, like the green team really works together on different climate issues, energy issues, anything that has to do with that. And environment, and we work together on healthcare. Well, we work together really on justice issues, social justice, I would say.
And then we have a democracy team that has, and Allison's on that. So the democracy team. So
it's a small team too, but and then we work together in small groups. Like Marilyn and I work a lot together. We email, we text, we talk. And I think how we reach out to you or the action workshop, lobby week, there's the ACT programs on Mondays, and the legislative newsletter. And then people reach out to me as individuals, you know, with questions. Anything else?
I find it most helpful when someone will read about something that's going on in our community and ask a question about it. I can look into it. Sometimes that alerts me to problems that I'm not aware of yet. It's really helpful feedback.
So what we'd like to talk about next is what we need help with. So Marty, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, of course, I consider the bills in the legislature the core of what we do. And yet we try to follow as many as we can and have to leave some aside, but some of the bills are a little more complicated. They're going through more process. I would find it valuable to have someone focus on just one bill and focus very heavily on it. And you know, there's a legislative website that has almost all the information you need, but there'd be news to look into. What's the news media talking about this bill? It's a high profile one. And then as it goes through committees, it'll go through amendments. What's the meaning of those amendments? Because it's not always clear. And so focus on just one and help the issue chair out with a lot of background there while we're working the other bills and such. That would all get it. Also, listen to the testimony of the committees. Who's opposing it and why? Who's for it and why? That's really good insight in how we craft our message, because we want to emphasize the things that if we support it, that are going to help the legislators understand why it's a good idea. And then I heard from Cindy Madigan that she would like somebody to critique her testimony, whether the written or the script she's written for oral testimony. Now, that would be a pretty fast cycle. She may have something and she needs it tomorrow or the next day, but somebody to look it over, a new set of eyes. How does this sound to you? Do you understand what I'm saying? And just give her some feedback back so she can have a little more confidence in the testimony she's giving in the testifying. And then, you know, passing a bill is really the first step in changing policy anywhere in the state, because then it goes into rulemaking, and then it goes into hearings with commissions and such. And that is more work to do. And once again, if you have an interest in a topic on a bill that passed, it would be very helpful to me for someone just to try to follow it through the follow-on process. And because the lobbyists are still working, and they're going to lobby the commissions and who's creating the rules and such, and help us understand how that may be drifting away from what we thought and what maybe everybody else thought was the intent of that bill and the policy change. And we have an opportunity also to testify in those commissions when they're bill making or when they're rule making, and add our voice to that process as well. So that kind of thing would be helpful, just to understand what is going on as the bill leaves the legislature and goes on into the departments and stuff for implementation. And besides, again, you don't need to be an expert here. You just need to have some curiosity maybe and some interest in that topic. Don't need to be an expert because you'll get some mentoring too. Working with the issue chair, they can help identify what pathways to look at and really get some information that can make a difference to the lobby team and to public policy in our state. And that's my
I want to
story.
see if others have anything they want to add.
I'd like to, and I think that one place where we fall down on the lobby team is something, it's just because we don't have enough time. Because there's too much to do, is this follow-up after the bill is passed. What is it? How is it implemented? And that makes all the difference in the world, in terms of what the specific regulations are. We tend not to follow those.
Yeah, on that same vein, I think it'd be really helpful, and Cynthia can probably provide a lot of guidance on this, is looking at the budgets when they come out at the end of the session. I remember one year there was a bill for spraying a nasty pesticide, and we testified in opposition to that, and the bill died. And lo and behold, in the final budget, on like page 367, for funding for spraying that pesticide. I couldn't believe it. And I ended up talking to a friendly legislator who then on the floor of the House had that removed, that line item removed. But I mean, dirty.
Yeah.
But somebody needs to be looking at that budget. And how many pages is it, Cynthia?
About 900 and something. Yeah.
But
It's usually about 2 days.
Word search works really well. So we're running a little short on time, so let's take Ann, and then I want to shift gears just a little bit.
Well, I wanted to expand a little bit on what Marty was saying on the follow-up and the rulemaking, because every once in a while you get a surprise request to sign on to make comment on the rulemaking. And if you haven't been following that and have the information, then you're kind of playing catch up. And then usually there's a big window. It gets announced here and you've got time, but if you're not seeing that pop up on a calendar, then you all of a sudden get a request the week before, and then that plays havoc with our process.
There's one other thing that hasn't been mentioned that we would like help with, and that is if individuals, so we are authorized by the state board to speak in the name of the league at the state legislature and state agencies. Any other league member cannot do that. What you can do, however, is you can speak as individuals. We would love to have you sign up to testify. We know that you can sign in pro and con, and we put that in our newsletter all the time, but extra testimony from individuals would be super helpful, or emailing to your legislators. So that's the other thing I would add. So we're really short on time. We're only supposed to have 8 more minutes. And so I'm going to collapse the next 2 pieces here. One of them is, what questions do you have now that you've heard this? And the second one is, what would you find more helpful for you in advocacy issues?
Hey, I would say, is there a way we can get off the email of the national LW?
I can't help you with that one. I'm sorry. Yes.
I'd like to know how you define success, each one of you. Well, I mean, not to take up that much time, but what are you looking for that makes you feel successful when, you know, like on page 367, they stuck that in? Or what did do, or when there's you know, when something comes up to try to take the bill away.
Let's just take a couple of people. Marty, sure.
Okay, well, you know, we ask people to sign in the bill, pro or con. You know, we give them a link and everything. And I'm looking through the long list of who signed in pro or con. I love to see a whole lot of names I recognize. And I know our league members or reading our newsletter. That's one thing I see because I'm communicating well, apparently. But that's kind of superfluous. You know, when the bill passes, is what, and passes clean. In other words, it isn't watered down too much, because often they get watered down and I just gotta say, okay, I'll take a half a step.
Does anybody else have?
It's a bad guys, that we've advocated against. That's always very.
So what other questions do you have, Nathaniel?
So I'm interested in what you see for next steps, or how you want to develop this lobby team in the years ahead.
Well, first of all, we'd like you all to get more involved. That's one thing.
We want to figure out how to better support you.
We want to know what we can do to make you more interested or more engaged, or your members more involved. And the second part, in answer to your question, is we have another category on our team called advocate. That is a person who is not an issue chair, but does a lot of support for an issue chair. And it's one way that an individual who's interested in potentially becoming an issue chair can get educated about that process and go through a lot of the training and that kind of thing. So we would like to see more advocates, and that's part of our request for help. The kinds of things Marty was talking about, we would call you an advocate, and that's how we develop more issue chairs. Some of us can't keep this up forever, so we'd like to train somebody to replace us. The other thing is, we don't cover all the issues. So if there's an issue that you know that you're interested in that we're not covering, we could work with you to become an issue chair. So it's really, we're kind of bound by the people that are dedicated to the issues and which issues they want to cover. So if there are others out there, we would bring you in. So Rajan, and then you're next. So.
I'm not 100% clear. So any one of you have your topic, you're the issue chair. Do you have a group of league people from around the state who you work with in a committee type fashion? Or is that
we have affinity groups?
The advocates?
Marty has a special one, but others have an affinity group.
Yeah, we have a green team of the issue chairs on environment, and there's advocates also, and we meet after the lobby team on Friday to work out how we're going to communicate the bills and who's going to take what new bill that pops up. But I also have and affinity group, environment affinity group of about 150 names on there. Some of you in here may be on that. And we have a newsletter called Our Climate Radar. It's climate, but climate covers everything now and in the environment area and a lot of other topics. And so we were getting articles in there. We also, have other news in that comes out every month. Somewhat informal, make them up, but that's another way we communicate. But on certain topics like this, the initiatives now, we have a small committee for 2117 that's trying to erase the Climate Commitment Act. No on 2117. And so we're writing communication for the whole state league and maybe to local leagues as well. And because it's going to take a lot of consistent communication. That's
So
each of you have an affinity group?
No, Rosalind, we did not have an issue chair for early care and education until the last couple of years. And what I was saying when I started out is I would love to have an affinity group of folks that we could work together, figure out how we could partner. Do we want to have a newsletter? Do we want interim? Would the group want alerts when there was a high profile bill that needed people weighing in? But so not all of our issue areas have affinity groups.
We do have a couple other affinity groups. So healthcare has one, and then criminal justice has really active. So if any of you are interested in maybe starting there.
It just sort of feels to me as a member, like bobbing for apples, that it's very haphazard, that I would find out there was even an affinity group. Not quite sure who's doing what or how to, and when I first joined, just to give you a perspective, when I first joined the league, I was in Seattle. I went to my unit meetings, and then I went to an action workshop. I had no idea there was a state level and all this legislation stuff going on. All I thought was that we were these little units and then we were part of this other group. And, so it's very murky. I know how hard you all try to communicate stuff, and most of us read 1/10 of it. I know all of those things, but I just wonder if there was a clear vision that was laid out. This is our lobby team, and we have under that in this sort of diagram of a sentence version, then we have the advocates, and we can have an affinity group, and that these include members from all over the state. Something that visual, that's what I am, is visual.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
We will do that.
Yeah.
I just want to say I had one on housing and homelessness for a couple of years, but then I ran out of steam. I could have used somebody to help me organize that every month. So Teresa was next, and then you. I'm sorry.
So to your question about what would be useful, I want to tell you what's already useful. I rip off and repeat a lot of things that Cynthia puts out in when she puts information out on the website. And so going to that, when I'm trying to call something together to submit to the voter, or if I'm trying to put something together for the Homeless Coalition or something, I can take a quote from the league and put it in there. The other thing is calendar item. This is self-serving, because I populate the calendar from Pierce County. But if there are things where you really want people to speak out on something and there's a session coming up, that would be pretty easy to put in the calendar. Also, we do have information sessions. I don't know how those would get out. I do go to your calendar, to the state level calendar, and rip off and repeat in there too. So if it shows up there, it's easy.
I didn't call on her earlier, so if you don't mind, I'm going to have her first and then you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, one of the things, and maybe this is an example, I go to the newsletter and I do pro and con and all that kind of stuff. But then, some bills pass, some bills don't, and I don't pay much attention. So as we have elections coming up, I am really wondering if you, as action leader people, could help provide us at local leagues some questions that we can ask our elected people that are running for office, because you better than anybody else know what bills might come back in, which ones, which ones. And I think that if you can provide us with some good questions that we can ask our people that are running, at least they'll know it's on our radar.
and we're watching it, and then maybe that'll stimulate an action.
Thank you. That's great. Go ahead.
Well, this was in sort of Rosin when she brought up that she joined and then went to an action group, and that's what I did too. And I was wondering, as you know, you sitting up there in the lobby, do you see a difference between Zoom action thing, you know, the action meeting workshop versus in person when we were doing a meeting in person? Is there, which was, do you see that one was more effective than others? I know it's a lot more work at the local league level to put these on in person. I was just wondering.
So that's a really good question, and we've been talking about it, and we've been talking to local league presidents about it too. What we have come to the conclusion is that we will proceed with the action workshops, try to have several around the state in person again. And we will try to use some of the systems that we use in the lobby week to have people meet with their legislators before session, instead of doing the lobby week thing during session. So we're talking about expanding it, doing it in person, and then setting up a lot more opportunities for members to meet with their
I
legislators.
know as a new member going to that action workshop made all the difference for me. It all of a sudden introduced me to what the league was. Yes.
In
I had
person?
not a clue when I joined.
In person was what you, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Hey, and so the OWL facilitates in person and Zoom, so it's a hybrid thing. So how much does an OWL cost?
$5,000. Yeah, I think that's about. Yeah.
I didn't really know.
Yeah. Well,
What other advice do you have for us? What other questions? We can stay for another 5 minutes if you don't mind a 2-minute break. Yes.
I'd be more excited about Lobby Week if we were working on several different issues that we care about instead of being restricted when we talk to our legislators to just the democracy.
Yeah.
As important as they are.
Thank you. We got that piece of feedback. We definitely got that, and we will be working on that concept.
I mean, I'm not unique.
Well, we might have gotten it from your written comment.
I have to go.
Okay. We're losing people, so we'll stay here for another couple of minutes if you want to, or you can leave.
I want to say, we keep referring to this as the lobby team up here. We're all the lobby team. And it's just, we need people in different pieces of it. And to think of yourself as the lobby team. I was not involved for a long time. He said, I live in Spokane. You don't just quit to Olympia from Spokane or Pullman or, you know, those kinds of things. So that was one of the lines of COVID.
I was gonna mention that I've gone to a couple other nonprofits, speaking with one voice groups, but they do not have a lobby team like this. Our league is expansive because of this lobby team, with people that are designated with the authority of the league, and other groups don't have that. And they're looking for a top to bottom like this.
And you know, that's another thing that attracted me to the league is the volunteers can really do this here. In many organizations, the volunteers really can't do a lot other than phone bank or something like that. I like the idea of I can do something specific. And so if you want to do that, be persistent in calling us, because it took me months before they answered the phone. But I was persistent.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it.